One of the biggest things that Ryan Poles needs to address at some point. I don't know when he's going to address it. I don't know how he's going to address it. I think he tried to already address it, and so far it's going poorly in the acquisition of Chase Claypool. But one of the absolute truths of modern NFL offenses for these young quarterbacks especially is you need to surround them with weapons. Right? The Bengals have Joe Burrow. They're faced with Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase. They draft Jamar Chase. They win the AFC. Pat Mahomes, he is paired with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce as he's developing. Deshaun Watson at the beginning had DeAndre Hopkins. On and on. Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. This year in the NFL, the Bears have the second fewest yards of any team in the league from the wide receiver position. Want to take a guess at who number 1 and number 3 are? They're interesting teams.
Fewest yards from the wide receiver position.
That is correct. Fewest yards.
The Atlanta Falcons.
That is incorrect. Oh, man. It's a good guess.
Hold on.
Okay. Take a couple more guesses, then I'll just give it up to you.
The Lions. Their run game's really good.
Not the Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been awesome.
The Pittsburgh Steelers.
No, sir. I'll just tell you guys. Number 1, the Baltimore Ravens.
Wait, is this wide receivers or tight ends?
Wide receivers.
Wide receivers.
Least?
Fewest yards from wide receivers.
The Chiefs.
No.
Nah.
Pat Mahomes leads the league in passing.
To Travis Kelce?
Yeah.
No.
You're thinking of big tight end
You're
teams.
outthinking yourself. Baltimore Ravens.
Doesn't happen.
Now, this is least, correct?
Houston Texans.
Good guess. Tennessee Titans.
Okay.
All right, so.
Big run games.
And the Titans traded away A.J. Brown. The Ravens have never surrounded Lamar Jackson with any receivers.
Has that hurt the Titans?
Offensive production this year it has. They're like 29th in scoring. But their running game is awesome. Their defense is good. Their division is bad. Their coach is pretty good. And they're probably going to, they're going to win the division again. But, in terms of offensive production and yards per game, it's hurt them. But in terms of wins this year, it hasn't.
Well, you mentioned a bunch of teams and quarterback situations. Sometimes those guys, come into situations where they're there, but we have seen where the wide receivers are already there. We've seen lots of teams. Obviously, Philly, as we've talked about, surround Jalen Hurts with stuff. Buffalo, as we will be talking about, going to get him Stephon Diggs.
Cincinnati, around Burrow.
And give him that college teammate with the built-in chemistry, which is a lovely, lovely thing. So, yeah, Justin needs a lot of help. So far, I really hate the Chase Claypool trade, but it'll be kind of woven into the conversation here.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was looking at guys because what happened last year with A.J. Brown was there were 4 dudes who all were up for contract extensions. And a couple of them held out. A couple of them demanded trades.
Yeah.
It was Terry McLaurin, who re-signed. It was Deebo Samuel, who re-signed. It was DK Metcalf, who re-signed. And it was A.J. Brown, who didn't.
So this is the group we should be looking at, going into their final year of a contract, which is.
But those are those are guys who the team doesn't have 5th-year options on.
Uh-huh.
So that's the T. Higgins, Jerry Jeudy class, where it's like, are we convinced that the Bengals are going to sign T. Higgins when they have to pay Burrow and pay Jamar Chase and they want to spend money in other places? Or are they going to let T. Higgins go? We don't know the answer to that. But I guarantee you the Bengals are getting calls on T. Higgins. Jerry Jeudy, who just had 3 touchdowns this last week. Broncos offense is terrible.
It'd be nice to have a Jew in town as a wide receiver.
It'd be very nice. Do you trade for a guy like that? You call him.
I'm not Jewish, though.
Are you going to tear it down? What are they going to do? And then, this is a little NBA style, potentially the disgruntled vet whose situation fell apart around him, thought he was going to be in one situation and then finds himself in another through circumstances that are not at all his own.
Okay, so do you have a list of?
So I've given you 2.
Okay.
Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins. Those would be the trade routes for the guy before they get paid.
I love T. Higgins.
I do too.
Oh, that is a true big-bodied number 1 possibility who can run all kinds of routes. He's got the speed to go deep. And sometimes Burrow chooses him as the guy he knows is going to win the slant in the big moment in the game over Chase. Sometimes he chooses him.
I think he's awesome. DeAndre Hopkins.
Whew.
So DeAndre Hopkins, he is obviously incredible. He is one of the best receivers of the last 5-6 years, but he's 30 years old. He's on a massive contract. They gave up a bunch of draft picks to get him from Houston and David Johnson. But then Kyler Murray just ruptured his knee.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray and their offense, the team wasn't doing very well.
And Steve Keim just walked away for health reasons yesterday. Cliff Kingsbury likely to get launched at the end of the year, one would think.
So they aren't close to winning. How many more years of DeAndre Hopkins' prime does he have? Are they going to try to recoup some of the draft? Basically, that's like the Khalil Mack example, except for a wide receiver.
That's exactly what I was feeling like. Is like, oh, are we going to be? Is there going to be an off-season moment where Ryan Poles finds a way to acquire a guy like this, and we're all suddenly Bears fascinated in the middle of the offseason?
I don't know. Well, because the Khalil Mack thing was, in theory, to put that team over the hump, and this team clearly isn't close to it. So it doesn't feel like Ryan Poles needs to acquire a bunch of draft assets and a bunch of young players and not give up multiple draft picks for an established player. But I do think there's at least an argument that is outweighed by, you need to get Justin Fields a number one receiver. Let me give you another name. Mike Evans. What if Tom Brady leaves?
What if Tom Brady leaves or goes to play in New England for one last hurrah, or goes to play in San Francisco for one last hurrah?
He's 29 years old. He's one of the most consistent.
Tom Brady? He's much older than that.
Mike Evans. Mike Evans is one of the most consistent, productive wide receivers.
Tell that to my fantasy team this year.
I mean, the touchdown numbers haven't been there, but he's been 1,000 yards every year he's been in the league.
Yeah, it's a great...
And he's going to do it again this year. He's at 805. He's only got the 3 touchdowns this year, but he's normally, 8, 12, 13, 12, 14. He's normally a big touchdown guy. This year, his touchdowns have been down for like the first time ever.
All right, okay, so Mike, do you have another veteran name?
I got another veteran name that you could just sign, but it's just money, and it surprised me. Odell Beckham?
No, thanks. He doesn't want to play in the regular season. He flat out said it.
Well, he's coming off a knee injury. He'll play in next year's regular season.
You sure about that?
I think if he wanted to be here, I think he'd be here now.
I don't know.
If he wanted to be anywhere.
Yeah.
He's
had meetings.
He said on a pod just earlier in the week, he's like, why do I need to play in the regular season? Why do I need to do that? And it wasn't just about this year. He did the same thing last year. Hold out for a while. So I'm a no. It feels like unnecessary baggage to me.
Okay. I mean, every team he's on has enjoyed him for the most part. Cleveland was not great, but fair enough. Fine. But
how about Michael Pittman?
Michael Pittman, if they don't sign him, that would be an option. I don't think he's a 1.
No. Well, see, I brought him up. I brought him up because of my overriding fear, which is that they shot their shot with Claypool, and that they're not going to choose to use more ammo for this situation, this coming off season. And I'm not sure that they'll have enough ammo for this situation, especially if we're talking about DeAndre Hopkins or Mike Evans.
Okay. Well, so couple of things.
I'm really worried that they shot their shot, and because I hate the shot that they shot so far.
Well, that's not generally how it works. Like the Eagles tried to draft Jalen Reagor. They passed on Justin Jefferson. It failed. They cut bait early. They drafted Devontae Smith. And they traded another first-round pick for A.J. Brown and immediately signed A.J. Brown. Yeah, so that's 3 first-round picks of resources and a $100 million contract to get 2 receivers. And you're like, wow, that's a huge overpay. That's not a great allocation of resources. It's not, but they're the Super Bowl favorite. And their quarterback's the MVP favorite.
And no, I would hope that Ryan Poles will be like Howie Roseman in that way of like quickly shifting if you have made a bad choice.
Yeah.
Which they did. And we talked about that with Zach Berman the other day. Like, once they realized, no, you have Rager, that's not good. Let's get out and let's find another one.
Yeah, and again, their team is in a more unique position because they are so much talent elsewhere. And in theory, Ryan Poles does not have the ability to trade multiple draft picks to go get one guy. He just traded one draft pick to go get Claypool. So could he trade another draft pick?
That's where I am.
And that makes all the sense in the world.
Like any assets that they add by trading down or assets that they have in general, I feel like he's going to use on the offensive line and the defensive line.
Oh, but I see, if he trades down, that's found money. That's what Miami did. Miami was like, you want to come up and you want to trade us a bunch of picks? We're going to then trade back up and get Jalen Waddle, and then we're going to trade a couple of these things for Tyreek Hill, and then we're going to trade down again, and then we're going to trade our pick for Bradley Chubb. And they just draft picks do not necessarily need to be used just to select a player in the draft. That's why, to me, getting the top 2 or 3 pick is so incredibly valuable here. Like, if you want to just take Jalen Carter, fine, take Jalen Carter. He's awesome. It's not gonna be a bad pick for you.
No, but where they ought to trade down and turn it into assets for sure.
I think so too. And then you can take 2 or 3 things, and you can trade one of those draft picks for an established player, and then you could draft a couple of young guys on cheap contracts.
They just did that by trading Roquan, and then giving up the pick for Claypool.
Right, exactly. So they trade Roquan for a second-round pick, then they trade their second-round pick for Claypool. Right, so it's kind of how it works. So it's possible that they go into next year with
Claypool as their theoretical 1, Mooney as their theoretical 2, and
Byron Pringle / 3rd-round draft pick, second-round picks are productive wide receivers. We've been giving you the list of these names. Second-round wide receivers: George Pickens, Alec Pierce. This year,
Christian Watson.
This year, again, all of the guys I just mentioned: T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, all of those dudes. So you can do it. You can say second round pick. That's certainly possible. They could trade down in the first round and take the kid from TCU or the Jackson Smith and Jim from Ohio State. Quentin Johnson's the kid from TCU.
Marvin Harrison Jr. is 2 years away?
He's the 2024 draft. Yeah, not this draft, but next year's draft.
Yeah.
He's going to be a top 5 pick. So that one's going to, Bears fans will dream about that. The only way that happens, in my opinion, is if you trade down in this year's draft
with somebody who's picked
for an extra first-round pick next year, and that team ends up being bad. Like what's happening with the Rams pick for Detroit or the Denver pick for Seattle. So it happens, but to me, that's the only way Marvin Harrison Jr. is a Bear.
Okay, so
if you have an extra first-round pick next year and that team's awful, or you then trade both 2024 first-round picks to move up to select the guy. But yeah, he was on my list as so basically my thought was you can trade for a dude that you would need to sign, the Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman type. You could trade for a guy who's already signed but is totally established, Evans, Hopkins. You could just throw money at a veteran with upside and baggage, Odell Beckham. You could draft a dude in this year's draft, but you would need to trade down to do it because there's no wide receiver who's a top 5, maybe even top 10 prospect. Or you just wait for 2024 and you hope and pray that Mooney is healthy and Claypool is good.
And you watch
those are your options.
You watch Fields be special, and you hope he develops something with one of them that's miraculous.
No, he's just going to get hurt. You need 2 wide receivers on next year's team that are better than everyone you have now.
That's not going to happen.
The free agent class is just not good enough.
For free agent class,
then you need to trade for one of these guys.
You could trade for one of them, or you can put all of your scouting resources into drafting the next best thing.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
You could hit every year now. There are rookie wide receivers that are awesome. It's just gotten. You're 100% right.
One of them is not named Velus Jones Jr.
And one of them is not going.
You got to consider his age.
And one of them is not going in the top 5.
I kind of wish we had a baby horse on the roster instead. The more that I've thought about it,
they're more moldable.
They're right.
Get ripped up, not here to break them.
Yeah. Could the baby horse catch a punt? I don't.
healthier as like a baby horse.
Yeah,
I'm healthier as a baby horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, Danny, I'm with you. They need a wide receiver 1, but they also need a 2 that's better than anyone else on the roster. Because I like Darnell Mooney too, and I know we kind of scoffed at it at the beginning of the season when some folks were saying he's probably better in the slot. I think he is probably better in the slot, and you need 2 guys who can fly on the outside.
Well, I don't know if you're getting 2 guys this offseason. I'm always surround the quarterback with as much talent as possible guy. But so
I'd love to
That's what
get
they
one
say.
guy who's better.
So everyone said-
I mean, everybody. Like, I heard Bigsy saying this the other day, and he was right. Like, Bears got to stop collecting 2s. Stop collecting 2s and 3s. You gotta go find a 1. I feel like they traded a really, really good pick for a guy who maxes out as a 2 in Claypool. I hate it so much so far.
I said it the day they traded for him. I said it feels like an overpay for a very questionable prospect, albeit one with upside. It was like, oh, man. I mean, I remember him coming out. They're like, this dude could be Calvin Johnson. Look at all of the physical measurables. And then he had a 4-touchdown game as a rookie. He had 10 touchdowns as a rookie. And then he hasn't been productive since. And there's been inconsistencies in effort.
And a team a franchise that knows wide receivers said no thanks.
Yeah, so 312-644-6767, phone lines and text line all open here. Those are the options. You trade for the young guy that you have to sign. That's a super expensive investment. That's the literal A.J. Brown route, right? Call that the Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins route. There's the trade for the old dude who's already signed, but that's a year or 2 or 3 of their prime left, right? DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans are not going to play 5 years of prime football with Justin Fields.
No, but they could play
a couple.
They could play a couple.
Yeah, right. Evans is
Maybe 3.
Evans is 29. Hopkins is 30, and they're both special. So but they're expensive. But that maybe makes it cheaper to trade for them because they're older and you're taking the bad contract from the other team. So like most expensive here is trading for a Jeudy or a Higgins because they're young, cheap, and you've got to pay them. Next most expensive is trading for the expensive guy, but you have them for a lesser period of time in their prime.
And you give up a hell of a lot less to do it.
You could draft a receiver, but you probably have to trade down in order to do that, or do it in the second round with the Ravens' second round pick.
It's pretty low.
Which is pretty low. That's low. It's going to be lower than like where George Pickens was taken this year.
Awfully tough to bank on anything great.
That's like probably call that the 50th, 52nd, 54th pick in the draft, right? And that's Sky Moore was there, but he hasn't been very good. That Tyquan Thornton, that's the type of prospect you're talking about. And this wide receiver class, not as good as last year's receiver class. Or you just wait. And Justin Fields goes through all of next year without reinforcements at the receiver position.
So
those are your options.
They'll watch these 4 games and have that to add in. They'll see how Fields does. They'll see how Claypool does. They'll see how Pringle does. They'll see if there's anything there with N'Keal Harry. We'll see if Velus Jones runs a few more routes and gets out there.
Yeah.
And they'll take all that data in. All right, I know my thoughts.
All right, I want your thoughts. I want some. So we'll say option 1 is the Jeudy Higgins type of route. Option 2 is the Hopkins Evans type of route. Option 3 is the draft a player by trading down in this year's draft and banking on a rookie, to Shane's point. Just scout and pick the right one.
Mm-hmm.
Option 4, wait. And Fields just has to ride next year with Claypool and Kmet and Mooney and basically the guys you have and maybe a bargain basement Byron Pringle, Equinemius St. Brown type.
Just to clarify, though, real quick, my option is not the sole option. I only want a top-tier wide receiver rookie drafted if you also get a wide receiver 1.
Right. I want
both.
You want to just totally invest in receiver
Yes.
and just figure out the rest later.
And then pay for your offensive line.
Okay. All right. So there we go. I'm curious how people feel about it because I think it is one of the single biggest things that Ryan Poles has to make a decision on in the next couple of months. It's Parkins and Spiegel on The Score.